Hello and welcome, everyone. We're at the World Economic Forum on North Africa and the Middle East here at the Dead Sea in Jordan for a very special debate, a new context for peace. As the US President Donald Trump embarks on his first visit to the region, there's a lot of talk about reviving the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, and we're privileged to have two prominent guests, two actors of this peace process in the past, in the present, and maybe in the future. With me, Tzipi Livni, a former Israeli foreign minister. She was a negotiator with the Palestinians, and she is now a co-leader of the opposition and a Knesset member in Israel. Welcome.
Thank you.
Also on the set, Saeb Erekat, who is a member of the executive committee of the PLO and who is the chief negotiator for the Palestinians. Mrs. Livni, I want to begin with you. Donald Trump, the US president, has talked repeatedly about what he calls the ultimate deal between Israel and the Palestinians. And I read some statements from you recently where you sounded quite optimistic. Many observers in the region are quite skeptical. I want to know why you're so optimistic about
Thank you. I would like to start by saying that I believe that there is a huge opportunity now. The combination of Donald Trump as a president who wants to make the deal. I believe that there is only one deal, and this is two states for two peoples. The Arab world understanding that Iran and Daesh is the threat, and therefore there is an opportunity to work together, but it is also clear that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is their glass ceiling with their relations with Israel. And I believe that the message that should come also out of this session is a message of hope, not naivety, but I believe that we cannot afford the same pessimism, lack of trust in the process or in peace or on the other side. Trust me, we negotiated twice, and we didn't succeed. This is true. And we have also the reasons to be skeptic and pessimist. And even now I can find, the specific issues in which we would not agree, and I can, take this opportunity to get more support in Israel by being strong against the Palestinians, but I would not do it. Because this is the responsibility of the leaders, all of them, President Trump, Netanyahu, Mahmoud Abbas, and the entire Arab world, whether they would seize this opportunity or not. And I became optimistic, frankly, the moment in which President Trump gave the press conference with the Prime Minister Netanyahu. And he said, I want a deal. And he said, this is my priority. And, to change the word deal into two words, it's peace deal, peace treaty.
Right.
This is the only deal.
But obviously, we saw this story before. President Obama, when he arrived, said, I want a deal. You've had interactions, I understand, with one of Mr. Trump's person dealing with the issue, Jason Greenblatt. Has this informed you more in terms of your optimism, and are you...
I want to be honest with Mr. Greenblatt as well. He listens to everybody. He meets everybody, he listens, he opens to new ideas. I respect the fact that the new administration is willing to think outside of the box. If there is any other idea, he would be listen to it happily. So in these meetings, I don't get information. It is basically sharing my views, as I said, publicly. But since we have a president who really focused on this, and we see that this is also his first trip outside of the U.S., so the other option, is no hope. And for Israel, I believe that peace based on two states for two peoples is an Israeli interest. And therefore, I am focused on this. This is my reason for me to be in politics, and I'm not willing to give up yet.
Saeb Erekat, you were in the White House when President Abbas visited Donald Trump on May 3rd. You've attended a session. Initially, the assumption was that Donald Trump was bad news, or even very bad news for the Palestinians. We saw all the controversy around moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem. And we've heard in recent weeks Palestinian officials express also some optimism. Some are saying that President Abbas is now really ready for a comprehensive peace deal. Can you tell us what the mood is?
Good morning, everyone. To begin with, no one benefits more from peace and achieving the two-state solution on 1967 lines more than Palestinians. And no one stands to lose more in the absence of peace more than Palestinians. And I don't think it's a matter of conscience. I don't think that Israelis woke up one morning and felt sorry for my suffering. I did not wake up one morning and felt sorry for their suffering. I don't think the American president changed his mind because of his conscience. Look, it's a realization today that all of us need it. It's a genuine need for Israelis, Palestinians, Americans, and Arabs. And if President Trump, like us as Arabs, want to defeat extremism and terrorism, because 99% of those who are being killed by ISIS are Sunni Arab Muslims, and 99% of those who are fighting ISIS are Arabs. And since President Trump did not develop the techniques to kill ideas with bullets, and since no one has developed the techniques to prevent ideas to travel with or without visas because they cross borders without visas. So what do? I think two things are needed. One is to end the Israeli occupation, and there we don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's two states, 1967's, mutually agreed swaps in size and value, and the caveats that should be negotiated between the two sides. We have recognized the state of Israel's right to exist on 1967 lines. I hope that we will have a leadership in Israel one day to master the courage and the farsightedness to recognize the state of Palestine on 1967 lines. That's what we need. And it's not linked to negotiations, because self-determination of Palestinians is not linked to negotiations. The second thing that's needed for us as Arabs is today the real threat on us is that 55% of our Arab population are less than 20 years of age. This is the age of expectations. This is the age of needs. I don't think any Arab leader can compete with the so-called Caliph Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, what he's offering for desperate Arabs to die and go and claim their rewards in heavens. We as Palestinians have 26% unemployment rate in the West Bank, 39% in Gaza. I don't think I can promise a youthful Palestinian a one-bedroom apartment. So we need, as Arabs, to stand tall, revisit our educational system, our economic systems. It's time for good governance, the rule of law. We just cannot continue business as usual. We cannot. It's a must for us. It's a must. So the combination of President Trump succeeding, because the whole idea of the Riyadh conference is to stand shoulder to shoulder in the fight against terror. You cannot defeat terror in the absence of ending the Israeli occupation. You cannot defeat terror in the absence of revisiting, as Arabs, your educational, economic structure, and to allow people to participate in their affairs. Arabs can no longer see with the eyes of their rulers, hear through their ears, and speak in their tongues. This is the combination. These are the new realities. And I hope if President Trump, and I really saw his determination, I saw that he really was so strong in his determination to achieve what he called the ultimate deal. If he needs to succeed, he needs to avoid the approach of all American administrations since 1993. American administrations have one line, I call it what's possible. They go to Israel, see what the Prime Minister of Israel can do, what cannot do, and then they tailor their policy. If he wants to succeed, he needs to move from what's possible to what's needed. What's needed is a two-state solution to live and let live. There is only one option for us as Arabs, and we have introduced the Arab Peace Initiative, which is the most strategic initiative introduced by unanimous decision of the Arabs and Muslims, which specifies that once Israel withdraws to the 1967 lines, there will be full normalization with the Arabs. I hope that President Trump will move from what's possible to what's needed.
Right.
That's the key.
Your foreign minister said that the president conveyed the notion that he can reach that deal within a year. I mean, is this the impression you got, that Donald Trump was ready to work hard, maybe harder than his predecessors, maybe think differently and reach that goal within a year? Or do you think there needs to be more time because all those years of failure mean that there needs more time to address that serious issue?
Look, at the end of the day, it's not going to be anyone who is going to make peace for Palestinians and Israelis. It's going to be Palestinians and Israelis. And the parameters set by international law, by agreement signed, terms of references, is two states on 1967 lines. There are some who say that one-state solution. I don't think, by definition, a solution requires two parties. I don't think any Israeli will ever be part of this one state. If they don't want, if Mr. Netanyahu doesn't want one state solution, and he doesn't want it, and if he's fighting to undermine the two-state solution, so what he's advocating now is what I call one state, two systems. It's apartheid, and it's not sustainable. That is the honest truth. If Israelis believe that they can, through the continuation, next month we'll mark 50 years of Israeli occupation, so either Mr. Netanyahu will consider ending the occupation or give Palestinians equal rights, accept equal rights between Palestinians and Israelis, which is something he will not do. So if he doesn't want to do the two-state solution and doesn't want equal rights between Palestinians and Israelis, I think he is pursuing one state, two systems apartheid. We hope that President Trump, we hope that the Israeli society would realize that this is not sustainable, this is not doable, and the only option for us as Palestinians and Arabs is to live and let live within two states on the 1967 lines, for the state of Palestine to live side by side, the state of Israel in peace and security on the 67 lines.
Mrs. Livni.
Yes, I would like to answer something. Well, Israel would not be an apartheid state, not because of the Palestinians, because of our values, because of the nature of the state of Israel. Israel is a Jewish democratic state, and there are only two options on the table. I mean, I'm not against thinking outside of the box. As far as my understanding goes, there are two possibilities, as I've said. One is two states for two peoples, and the other is one state. This one state mainly would be a binational state, something that would not give an answer to the national aspiration of different peoples who live in this tiny place between Jordan River and Mediterranean Sea, the Jewish people and the Palestinians. And by saying, okay, Palestinian state is the obvious, well, it's part of the solution, but we cannot just throw the keys to the other side of the border, assuming that we will define the border. Hope for good. We are facing terror. Look at the situation in Gaza. And therefore, security is and should be part of what is needed, not only what both sides can agree upon, but what is needed. And on most of the issues, not everything is a zero-sum game. And there are issues that are Israeli interest, Palestinian interest, American interest, and Arab interest. And therefore, nobody wants to have a failed state or a terror state in the region. I mean, we have enough of those. So we need to take care of security. It's not only an Israeli interest, it's a global interest. We need to, and this should be endorsed. I would like also that the Palestinians would say something that the Israeli truly wants to hear, that an agreement, the meaning of an agreement is end of conflict, end of claims, because the whole idea is not just to create another state. The whole idea is to end an ongoing conflict that started before the State of Israel was established. I mean, in 1947, the United Nations decided that an end to the conflict is to establish a Jewish state and an Arab state as an end to the conflict, and this is what is needed. I agree what is needed now. Now, the role of the Arab states is very important, I believe, for both sides, for the Palestinians and for the Israelis, and this is why the summits and the gatherings now in Riyadh are very important, and the messages that would come out of them. You know, you ask me why I'm optimistic, and well, it's not the average Israeli. Most of the Israelis believe that there is no hope for peace, no partner on the other side. We left Gaza and we got terror and Hamas in return. Hamas, and I believe that this is something that we can all agree, represent the religious part of the conflict, no hope for peace with them. So what are we doing? Now, the game changer is the Arab world. If the Israelis would know that by making peace with the Palestinians, what we are getting is not just borders and a Palestinian state on our borders, but peace with the entire Arab and Muslim world, this is a real strategic change for Israel in the region. Now, I understand, and this is the Arab Peace Initiative, in which it says that when Israel would reach peace with the Palestinians, I put aside Syria for a moment, then they would make peace with Israel. But what I suggest is that when the president takes now steps, hopefully he would take steps, the whole idea is not just negotiations for the sake of negotiations. And I agree that we shouldn't reinvent the wheel. And there are certain issues that we are quite close. You know, every negotiations, it's like using magnets. At the beginning, it goes like this, very fast. And then in the end, you find gaps that are narrow but very deep. And therefore, I think that the basis for negotiations can be drawn at the beginning of negotiation, shouldn't waste time. There are issues that we already agreed upon or quite close to an agreement upon. And then we should negotiate all the issues in parallel.
Right, but obviously...
But I want to say something else. And when things are serious, if there is a basis for negotiation, and if the Israelis and the Palestinians make big decisions at the beginning, then also the Arab world can take steps toward Israel and can support the Palestinians on their decision-making. I mean, every agreement is based on compromises. It's not going to be easy to Israel. It's not going to be easy to the Palestinians. And therefore, the support of the Arab world is very important for both sides.
Right, but obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister, and as Saeb Erekat seems to be saying, and you're in the opposition, the big question is whether he would be ready to sit down at the table. President Abbas has said that he is ready to meet Mr. Netanyahu under Mr. Trump's auspices. I mean, do you think Mr. Netanyahu, who says there's no majority for peace, would be willing to sit down?
Yes, but it's not enough. I mean, we passed the times in which a meeting between Israel and the Palestinians, or between an Israeli prime minister and a Palestinian president, is the news. It's not only about sitting together. It's about what we discuss. Are the discussions serious or not? And therefore, I believe that meetings are possible. I think so. This is not a problem. And Netanyahu, as a prime minister, also negotiated in the last round of the negotiations with Secretary Kerry, who truly invested in it. I want really to express my appreciation for him as well. He invested in it. It was all over, but
it didn't pay off, obviously.
Yes, and I have my own criticism also on the Palestinian side, because there was a framework for negotiations that we were willing to continue to negotiate on the basis of this with reservation. We didn't get an answer, or President Obama didn't get an answer, but it's not... I think that the last thing that we should do today is to enter the blame game. Whose fault is it? Let's speak about the future. And it is true that the current coalition in Israel, there are parts of this coalition that represent an idea which is not two states for two peoples. But as I said also publicly in Israel, we in Israel, those supporting the idea of two states for two peoples, those believing in peace, we would support Netanyahu if he makes the right decisions. And we would not face the situation in which he falls because he took a step toward peace.
Mr. Erekat, is President Abbas ready to meet Mr. Netanyahu without any gesture on settlements or prisoners? We know that this has been an issue in the past. Is President Abbas really ready to say to the American president, okay, you want to make peace, I can be your partner, let's sit down and talk, without all the precedents where those meetings didn't take place because one or the other party put some conditions on that meeting?
I just want to clarify one thing. When we say we want to stop settlement activities, that's not a Palestinian condition. That's an Israeli requirement. Both sides agreed in Article 37 to the interim agreement 1995 that both sides will not take any steps that may preempt or prejudge issues reserved to permanent status, including settlements. We have the settlement activities that's really undermining the hope in the minds of Palestinians, and we urge them to stop it. And then we have now, for instance, look at this explosive situations. We have humanitarian demands for our prisoners, which is very, very humanitarian, and we urge the international community to have the Israeli government comply with these demands so we can not have any escalation. We need to have means of de-escalation and deconfliction now. Now, having said that, I just want to say, yes, we expressed our readiness to engage seriously, but the idea is not, as Madam Livni said, it's not about just sitting down. To be honest with you, it's not about even negotiations. It's about decisions.
I agree.
It's about decisions. Palestinians and Israelis have exchanged maps one day. Israel offered a map, different on certain percentages. I think today you need a prime minister in Israel who accepts to put maps on the table. During the Kerry 9-month negotiations, Mr. Netanyahu refused to introduce a map on the table. Refused. So how can I determine and bridge the gap between what Israel offered and I offered? How can I define the border, the jurisdiction of security, water, all these issues without agreeing as to where the states will be? So the key here is that if we want to avoid the mistakes of the past, we need to have decisions. We need to have decisions and not negotiations for the sake of negotiations.
Are you ready to...
And then I would address the question, of course, once we have a peace treaty that solves all core issues, Jerusalem, borders, settlement, refugees, water, prisoners, there will be an end of conflict, end of claims. Right. That's given. The Israelis, I cannot force the Israelis to accept any word in a treaty that will not serve their interests. But I don't want also the negotiating behavior of anyone to come and dictate on me, like they forced us in the 1990s to recognize the state of Israel. And we urge them that this recognition should be reciprocal. I urge Mr. Baker personally. I told him this is the golden opportunity. The recognition should be reciprocal between the state of Palestine and the state of Israel. No. And then they come to you and select this issue, that issue, and so on. Now, I know the imbalance in the negotiations. But at the same time, as Palestinians, we need to reach an agreement that's fair. And fair is provided by the terms of reference, international law, Security Council, General Assembly resolutions. Because at the end of the day, no one can dictate an agreement on us that will not satisfy the aspirations of the Palestinian people to live as equal neighbors with the state of Israel.
Right. Mr. Erekat, did you receive any assurances from the Trump administration that the U.S. Embassy would not be moved to Jerusalem?
We raised this issue with them.
I imagine.
They can answer this question. We believe that the annexation of East Jerusalem is null and void, illegal. By the way, this has been the American position since 1967. We believe that moving the embassy would mean the end of the peace process. We mean there is no meaning for Palestine to be a state without East Jerusalem being its capital. And if they anybody want to move the embassy there, that means it's a fait accompli recognition of Israeli annexation of East Jerusalem, which is something that will put an end to everything. I hope that President Trump will give us a chance, will give the Israelis a chance, will give himself a chance. Because if he says in a press conference that he will not impose solutions on us or the Israelis, all right? The fact that he's going to move the embassy is imposition, is dictation. We did not receive anything from them, but I hope that they will not take such a step and leave it to the negotiations.
Mrs. Livni, do you think it would be wise for Mr. Trump to hold off on what he's announced during his campaign after his election and what many Israelis are wanting? Do you think that for the sake of trying peace, this move should be put on hold?
I'm an Israeli politician. Jerusalem is the capital of the state of Israel, and I would like to see all the embassies in Jerusalem. I'm not an advisor to President Trump, and I think that he should take in consideration, and he would take in consideration all the other aspects. But as an Israeli, Jerusalem is the capital. Saeb, Mr. Erekat referred to East Jerusalem, and also what would be the end game according to their positions. But this is, I believe, you would not, I think, hear any different answer from any Israeli, but I'm not his advisor.
Well, I think Israel accepted to have Jerusalem as a core issue in the negotiations.
It is.
I think the whole international community rejected the annexation of East Jerusalem, and I think it's only fair that to say that we don't take any steps that may preempt or prejudge. And I hope that, Jerusalem, I know the importance of Jerusalem to Muslims, Christians, and Jews. No one is denying this. By the way, to us as Arabs, Judaism is not a threat, was never a threat, will never be a threat. Our conflict with Israel is not over something written in their holy book or my Quran. We have a territorial, political conflict. We should confine it as such. And we should understand that East Jerusalem, as much as Khan Yunis, Gaza, Jericho, Ramallah, is part of the occupied territories of 1967. And that's the honest truth. And that's what international law is all about. And this is the consistent American position on settlements in East Jerusalem since 1967. No one has accepted the annexation of East Jerusalem.
Okay. Of course, this was the Palestinian position in the negotiation.
This is not my position. This is the international community's position.
I believe,
this is international law, Security Council.
And therefore, I believe that it is an Israeli interest to negotiate, to end the conflict, to find a solution, to delineate borders that would be the legitimate borders of the State of Israel. And we have, of course, our connection, historical, religious, and more to Jerusalem, and especially parts of Jerusalem that are very important to other faiths as well. We should try to avoid and prevent turning this conflict into a religious conflict. This is something which is very important because this can ignite the region, in a moment. I don't want neither ISIS or other religious terrorist organization to exploit this in order to turn Jerusalem into a religious conflict. But I want to say one thing, because we know each other very many years now. It is true that Saeb and the Palestinians, they don't have problems with Judaism. And he's speaking about a conflict, which is true. But the conflict is between two different peoples. And the whole idea, as I said before, is two national movements. And we need to end this conflict between the two national movements. One is basically Zionism, that is the national movement of the Jewish people. And the other, so to refer to Judaism just as a religion is something that undermines the nature of the conflict that we are facing. And the only way to end the conflict is by understanding that we have two different people with two different aspirations to do different states in different parts of this place. And as I said before, I don't want to enter into blame games about what happened in the past, but it is clear that for the Palestinians, they want to see the borders, as it should be clear that I want to know what would happen on the other side of the border. And in the past, we bridged some gaps in an understanding what are the parameters before we worked on maps. What are the parameters to delineate the border? And I believe that this can be also a huge step forward.
Mr. Erekat, do you think, concretely, we know the core issues, they've been there for years and years, and you've negotiated them many times over, but on the issue of the borders and especially the issue of land swaps, do you think that basically everyone knows what they're going to be about? Or do you think there still needs to be progress on this key issue to make this work this time around?
Number one, I believe that all core issues are doable. I've been there. I know it. I hope that one day there will be a leadership in Israel that will sit down on maps and agree to bridge the gap between the percentages that we both offered. All core issues are doable, and I don't think any Israeli or Palestinian will accept a treaty that will not satisfy their interests. And I just want to comment on one thing. It's not a religious conflict, I agree with you. It should not be turned into religious conflict. But those who are trying to push, I know that some of our own people are trying to make it religious, but also Israel should watch very carefully that when the Dawabshe family was burnt in Duma, an 18-month toddler, they were simply burnt because they're Palestinians. And that's something that shows that there are those in Israel who are trying to push this as a religious conflict, and they must be stopped. We're trying to stop those.
We stop them.
No, we
put charges against them and put them in jail.
We need to make sure that the culture of peace prevails. We have a difficult conflict, a serious conflict, a political conflict, whatever it is, but I don't think we should downgrade the whole thing between us into this situation in the West Bank today. What settlers are doing, what the deputy Knesset head yesterday said that we are faced to accept or to be transferred. This culture must end. I'm not saying that we don't have our own incitement. No, we do. But at the same time, we must maintain the high ground. One day, we will reach a solution. I know. Yeah. Because it's a genuine need for all of us. And the only solution for us is 2 states on the 1967 lines. That's.
I would like to go back to another president and the meeting that we had in July 2013 with President Obama. And he asked, what is the best advice for the negotiation? And I have the same advice, basically. When you negotiate, keep outside of the negotiation room what I call, it's more than background noises, but these are things that makes it very problematic and very difficult for politicians to continue the negotiation. And what Saeb just said, it's not a matter of culture. There are politicians that I don't agree with them, I would never agree with them, but these are politicians that have their position. But this is not the culture, this is not the nature of the Israeli society, and we need to fight in terms of our own politics to keep this vision of 2 states for 2 peoples alive, to act against incitement, to act against violence. And you should do this as well. And in the past, we had an understanding what is culture, what are the steps that are needed in order to have what we call culture of peace amongst our society. Maybe this can be also a good idea to start with, not just to speak in parallel to speaking about core issues, not to wait until the end of negotiation, but to start with it, starting to fight against incitement, against terror, against violence, and preaching for something that in both societies looks almost impossible, and this is peace.
Do you want to react?
Yeah, I think once hope is maintained in the minds of Palestinians and Israelis that it's doable, and I don't think that people are doing what they're doing simply because they like to do it. If you have a desperate situation, desperation will lead to desperate acts. But I want to go back to one important element about President Trump and why he has the chance to make the ultimate deal. First of all, the parameters are very well defined. It's decisions. Number 2, he's facing a lot of problems in the United States, but I think that both the Democratic and Republican parties are fully supporting the 2-state solution. He's coming to Riyadh to meet with all Arab and Muslim leaders. I think no one will not support him in achieving the 2-state solution in 1967. I think he may have differences with Russia and accusations, but the Russians are fully on board with the 2-state solution, the Chinese, the Africans, the Latin. So the one issue that the whole world will support President Trump without any reservation is his movement to what's needed to achieve the 2-state solution in 1967. No one will oppose that.
Just one.
You know, he said that he doesn't want to impose or to force both sides or to put something on the table that would force both sides to make the decision, but I believe that he can be influential enough.
Because we have...
And this is why I am also a bit optimistic these days.
Just quickly on Hamas, we've seen moves by the Palestinian Authority to cut power supply, salaries, and so on. Is there maybe an understanding with the Trump administration that getting tougher on Hamas could help revive the peace process?
There is no discussions with the Americans or anybody else. Look, Hamas is a Palestinian political party. We have 26 political parties. People must understand very, very clearly, we will not have a state in Gaza, and we will not have a state without Gaza. So every effort is being exerted by us now to make sure that the West Bank, including East Jerusalem and Gaza, are a single territorial unit. And I don't think we can have a Palestinian state without one authority, one gun, and the rule of law. That's on us. And what we're doing now is not that we want to cut electricity or punish anything. We're moving and telling Hamas it's time for genuine reconciliations through the formation of a national unity government now. Number one, when we differ as Palestinians, and we differ, it's ballots and not bullets. We form a national unity government, and we go to national elections immediately. We go back to the ballots, to the people to decide. So I hope that this offer that's being presented to Hamas today by my president, President Abbas, is very simple. National unity government and going to elections. But once again, we can never have a state in Gaza, and we can never have a state without Gaza, okay? And no one will, for us as Palestinians, I'm not doing Americans or Arabs or Israelis a favor when I say a Palestinian state must have one authority, one gun, and the rule of law.
I would like to say a few things shortly about Hamas. Hamas is a political party, but it is also a designated terrorist organization. The international community, the Quartet, put on the table 3 requirements from Hamas, and rightly so, to accept the right of Israel to exist, to accept former agreements between Israel and the Palestinians, and to renounce violence and terrorism. The idea, and this is something that I would preach for not only on the Palestinian side, and I tried to do it before Hamas took power, before the elections in 2006. I said there is no real democratic party in which terrorist organization can participate in election. We have Hezbollah in Lebanon, an armed militia that is using its power within Lebanon to get more and more power while being the proxy of another state, of Iran. This is something that should be unacceptable. In Israel, in the past, our Supreme Court denied the right of a racist party to participate in election because this is against the nature of democracy. So it's not imposing on the Palestinians something, but it's on this we have a mutual interest. Hamas is a terrorist organization, and therefore I completely agree that peace would be doable only when the future Palestinian state would not be Hamastan in Gaza and something else in the West Bank, but it would be one gun, one law, no gun, basically, a demilitarized state, but one law, of course, and one government. And therefore, if the Palestinians are talking about a unity government, it should follow the Quartet requirements, and this doesn't serve only the Israeli interest, it serves also the interest of those on the Palestinian side that would not, or that they are against using terror in this conflict and don't represent the religious side of the conflict as Fatah. I don't want to intervene on their political issues, but to speak about Hamas just as a political party, I would not take it as such.
Okay.
Well, I just want to insist that we have 26 political parties. We cannot cancel any party. Hamas, PFLP, DFLP, Fatah. What we're saying as Palestinians is that it is one authority, one gun, and the rule of law. That's very obvious, and that's very needed. But we differ with you in your classification of this party or that party on anything. But what we need to do as Palestinians is to understand that we differ Palestinians don't have to see in the eyes of Abu Mazen, speaks through his tongue, it's his ears, you know that. Everybody knows this. We're very transparent, very accountable. And at the end of the day, it's ballots. And every Palestinian has the right to participate in these elections, including Hamas and other parties. And that's why we offered Hamas. Number one is that when we differ, it's ballots and not bullets. And once again, it's on us.
So this should be their choice before election.
No, look, once we have a state, we're not a state yet. We're not a state. That's the problem. Once we have a state, I'm telling you, we cannot be a state, fully independent, sovereign state without one authority, one gun, and the rule of law.
Okay.
But I cannot be conditioned before the state to act like a state when you want me to act like a state, and then I'm not a state when it serves nobody's interest in your side that I'm not a state. So we have an overloaded wagon of complexities as Palestinians. We're 23 years old as an authority. It's really an overloaded wagon of complexities. When we commit mistakes, it doesn't mean that we wake up in the morning and say we're going to commit the following mistakes today. We're doing it because we are trying our best to build our institutions. I'm not saying, we're trying to proceed with full democracy, human rights, women's rights, the rule of law, transparency, where all Palestinians are equal under Palestinian law. And as such, we came a long way. I'm not saying we have finished. We have a long, long, long way to go. The key here is that once Palestinians realize their independence, dignity, and statehood, I can assure everyone, Palestine, for the sake of Palestinians, will be one authority, one gun, and the rule of law, and fully democratic.
Okay, I think that's all we have time for. I want to thank both of you very much. Thank you for attending this session. We'll obviously be following what happens during this trip.